Welcome to our week opener event where we'll be talking about how to navigate week openers. I am Jeffrey or Funkster, and I'll be talking about it. So, kind of our table of contents on what we've been talking about. What is considered as a week opener, how to choose a game plan, augment selection, talking about econ and holding units, and then we will also talk about some more niche aspects like Crystal Gambit, 4 loss into 2-6, and positioning when you have a weak opener. So what do we define as a weak opener? We define that as a stage 1 where you don't get any upgraded units. But you maybe are paired on 1 or 2 1 cost units. You don't get a single strong 2 or 3 cost unit from like a blue orb or your level 3 shops. You don't have really good slammable items for your units. And this means that you are very likely to lose the next 3 fights, if not the next 5. So for example here, we have this board on our right, Kennen, Malphite, Lucian. As our board, the Rowan is our board. None of the units are upgraded. They do have some synergistic, they do have some synergy, but because they are unupgraded, your front line is very weak, and Lucian doesn't do that much damage. And if you look at the bottom right, we see our items, chain, tier, and glove. None of these items are very slammable on any of these units. Maybe you can make a tank item, but a tank item on a 1-cost 1-star unit is not high value. So yeah, we're just gonna be losing the next 3 fights. It's kind of out of your control, but this is something you will have to consider. So how do we choose a game plan? Or what decisions help you kind of choose your game plan? And the first things for sure is that just know that you will be losing most of the fights on stage 2. And then based on your early units and your item drops, you should think about like, what composition are we playing for? Does the composition want specific items? For example, sorcerers needs a lot of tiers and gloves, and so maybe losing is perfectly fine. We can get carousel priority, we can guarantee tiers, we can guarantee gloves, rods whenever we need. And another thing to consider is, will a comp be strong as long as you hit your units? So this also goes into like, Sorks is probably the easiest to talk about, but another example is maybe like Star Guardian. As long as you hit like Poppy 2, Jinx 2 with like good items, the comp does operate pretty well. And so those are like those help you decide, oh, we should angle these comps, and if we do angle these comps, what do we need to take off carousel, and all that good stuff. So now another thing to consider is, when are we trying to spike our board and be strong and start winning fights? You don't want to. Most of the time, you don't really want to like lose every round until like stage 4 or 2, and we should hopefully do things to guarantee or like have a higher chance of spiking when we want to spike. And then this is also important on deciding kind of when you want to spike. You can't just say, oh, let me spike on stage 3 because I feel like I want to spike on stage 3. It's rather, if your board has potential with strong pairs, and maybe there are certain 3 costs or 2 costs that can make your board a lot stronger, that means that you can play for stage 3 spike even if you aren't rerolling, even if you're playing fast 8. And however, if your board has no foreseeable future, let's say you're playing around like Kennen, Sorks, and those, like, the opener is not very strong as a whole anyways, you're just gonna play for stage 4 spike. Don't really care to win on stage 3 either. It's also important to note that stage 3 spikes can apply to reroll. So a lot of the times, if you are rerolling, you will be spiked on stage 3 because you will be rolling on 3-2 at level 6 for maybe a 2-cost, 2-star 2-cost that is your main carry. Or for example, if you are playing a 3-cost reroll, and you've been losing most of the rounds, you'll be leveling on 3-5 at level 7 and rolling some gold on 3-5. So to now further talk about like 2-1 augment selection based on the game plan, we want to click augments that give us time that scale instead of augments that give us upfront value. So things that give us tempo are bad. For example, like augments that straight up give you an item, like the Memo Vest augment. It's not the best because you will not have a good holder for it. You will not have a two-star one cost for that. 2-star one cost tank. But if you're playing for that stage 3 spike, you do want to care. You want to take augments at scale, but you want augments at scale but give you the value by stage 3. So for example, time skip or even or over encumbered, these two augments, basically all of the value is given to you by 3-1, which means that you can then start using the resources on stage 3, and your 3-2 augment selection at that point can be more tempo oriented because you will maybe want to continue winning, and so on and so forth. A good example of like a stage 3 board that really likes to spike on stage 3 is like the mech board, mech opener. There's a lot of, if you hit a GP, if you hit a Senna, your board gets a lot stronger, and there's a lot of like 2-cost or 3-cost units that you can start slotting in, like Kabuko, Udyr, Senna, that are just strong on at 1-star. That's why like your board has potential in that sense. Other augments that are good are, for example, like Pandora's items, because you'll be slowly slamming items as you progress the rounds, and that's going to slowly build your board strength. On the other hand, we have our stage 4 spike, where you don't really care about winning stage 3, and so then your 2-1 augment selection should maybe scale even deeper into stage 3, if not all the way to stage 4. For example, this can include like calculated loss or clear mind. Both these augments want you to lose, or clear mind doesn't allow you to hold any pairs, which means that your board will just never get to a point where it is strong. So you're more inclined to click these augments. Another example, back to stage 3 spike a little bit, like Buried Treasures is quite nice because for the next 6 rounds, or even Buried Treasures on 3-2 for a stage 4 spike, you're more willing to click that because you don't, the items, you will get all the items by stage 4-1, and you don't care about missing out on value on stage 3 at that time. This important thing to note is that if you're trying to spike on stage 4, gold is really important. Gold is a little bit more important than items for sure. You have to be able to guarantee the fact that you will hit your 2-star 4-cost unit by like 4-1 or 4-2 latest. So therefore, augments like Shopping Spree is quite nice, right? I think it gives you around 35 or 36 rolls by 4-2 when you're level 8, or like by 4-1 when you're level 8, and 35 rolls, 36 rolls is like 70 gold worth of value in a prismatic, which is a good amount. So just things to think about when you're clicking your 2-1 augment selection, especially when your board is this weak. I think that whenever people are scared of that their board is weak on 2-1, they try and forcefully. I think people try and forcefully take a tempo augment to kind of salvage their opener, and how I think about it is that you should play kind of what you're dealt. Play around what you're dealt. If you're dealt a bad hand, you have to kind of take advantage of the fact that you have a bad hand. Because a good way to think about it is also, if your tempo is bad and you're trying to salvage it, your tempo at best will just be like a mediocre tempo. So then from winning 0 fights, you might win 2 or 3 fights. And then, which is like kind of, you lose the value of a tempo augment. And then also Psycho puts a very important note, is that with that many rolls, especially when you have that much gold going into stage 4, taking these econ augments, you're very likely to hit 5 costs that your comp plays around. For example, in Sorks, you might hit Gwen. If you're playing maybe like Mentor Mech, you actually might hit Lee Sin, Yone, and yeah. So moving on, we do want to talk about like, when do you want to make econ intervals and when do you want to hold units? And this also just falls back to your game plan of when you want to spike. So for example, if you want to spike on stage 3, you really do want to hold every pair and important units so that our unit quality will be good. You're willing to lose econ intervals to potentially be strong on stage 3. And so, for example, in our example here with kinematic Lucian again, sorry, you're not going to be willing to sell Lucian Kennen as much because Lucian 2 with items can kill units and is quite strong. And then if you hit like a random Senna or GP, then you have you get 3 Mechan because you take out Malphite, you play Aatrox. All those things kind of compound, and which is why I like to say like the mech opener is definitely one of the strongest stage 3 boards, if not stage 2 as well, if you don't have the mech on stage 2. And on the other hand, right, we have our stage 4 spike, which means that you don't really care to win stage 3, which means you want to maximize as much gold as you can get, and for our stage 4 roll down. So it's more important to make every econ honorable. And more into an example of that is like if you're calculated loss and you want to sell Lucian Aatrox Kennen to make 10 gold, you would definitely do so. You don't care about winning with calculated loss. In fact, you want to lose. And so upgrading these units makes no difference, and making that 10 gold, that first econ interval, helps compound you into making more gold in the future. And then back to like stage 3 spike, if your Pandora's items and slamming items as we speak on Rise for Lucian. Slamming items on Lucian for Rise. Yeah, if you end up upgrading Lucian with like perfect Rise items, this Lucian unit will go infinite. So now we're talking more so on like kind of more niche aspects of a weak opener, and this goes to like Crystal Gambit. Crystal Gambit this patch has gotten a lot better. They buffed the amount of gems you get per loss, and if you get a 9 loss cash out, you're very likely to get at least a 250 cash out, if not 300. And at 250 to 300, the amount of gold and value you get is close to like a gold augment. So however, when you play this Crystal Gambit opener, this kind of follows the same plan, but like on stage 4. You're trying to lose 9 times, and more likely than not, 9 times will end up on being like stage 3-6. Is when you cash it. And so because you're cashing on so late on stage 3, you're gonna try and lose stage 3, and the same follows where you want to just click every econ augment, scaling augments. Yeah. I think it's just important to note that a lot of the Crystal Gambit cash outs are econ or item focused, so you get resources in that sense, and so then maybe your 4-2 augment can be more combat focused rather than accommodating aspects of your board that you're lacking. Yeah. So I think you will just have like a higher cap if you're playing Crystal Gambit. And then now, this is like I think one of the most important aspects of a weak opener, is that most of the time you'll be losing the first 4 rounds, right? And now we're heading to 2-6, where this is our last round for the stage right before neutrals. You almost must always lose 2-6 to a 5 loss, because once you hit that 5 loss, you'll be getting, I think, 2 or 3 gold for the 5 loss streak, and this streak gold also applies on our neutrals. So if you break your streak gold, you basically lose 2 rounds of your streak gold, which is at least like 6 plus gold, 6 gold. And then another aspect of this is if you're playing to spike on stage 4, which means that you're going to be losing stage 3 as well. You broke your streak gold for the entirety of stage 3 as well. So you have to rebuild your like loss streak on stage 3, and this will cost you just like at least like I would say a silver augment worth of gold. And also because you'll be like low HP already since you lost the previous 4 rounds, you should not be that scared of losing more HP yet for the time being, because it's just kind of playing around the cards that you're dealt. And for sure, and one more thing to note is especially important when you have Crystalline or Calc Loss, because by the time you're on 4-6, you will have double downed, and losing that double down basically griefs your entire game. I think so. In most cases, right? If you see your contest, if you scout and you see your matchups, and there's another person that's on 4 loss, and it looks like his board is very weak, or he even might even like sell some strong, like bench some strong units on his board onto his bench. There's a high consideration for you to maybe sell your entire board, and this is because you want to maximize your chance of losing against that one guy that is also very weak. There will be some exceptions that come into play. Like for example, if you're playing Crystal Gambit, you can't sell your Syndra, Vi, Janna, Swain, right? And so what you will do sometimes is, as shown in this picture, you want to trap your melee carry, your melee unit in the corner with 2 range units. And most of the time, you might just do like Syndra, Janna, and Vi in the corner. Play 3 out of 4 units on this round, and just try and lose as much as you can. However, if you also note that sometimes maybe like the guy that you're contesting for the 5 loss is kind of not changing his board up or anyway, you don't need to necessarily sell your entire board. Maybe just make it slightly weaker. Play 2 copies of like a unit, because then you lose out on traits. Just some nuances that you have to play around, but that's the idea of kind of making sure and ensuring the fact that you lose this one round. And then finally, really importantly, kind of positioning. I think a lot of times when we think about positioning, we think about late game fights, and we think about how to maximize our chance of winning. But positioning is actually very important when you're lose streaking as well, because every unit you kill is actually 1 HP that you're saving for the entire game. Because how HP is, the damage you take from losing a round is calculated by stage damage plus 1 HP per unit that stays alive. So every unit kill is plus 1 HP, and if you want to think about it, from every fight from 2-1 to 4-1, you actually save 10 HP if you kill at least 1 unit. I think a good indicator sometimes to see like if you're doing a good job of positioning even on stage 2 is that if you end the stage 2 on a 5 loss with around 75 HP or more, you're doing a good job. That's like a good 5 loss, is what we would say. A lot of times, if you aren't positioning, or like maybe you're forced to like play a really weak board because you want to maintain your 5 loss, there will be times where you see players start end stage 2 with around like 68 HP, or like below 70 HP, which is like a little bit rough, right? Could be, and also like every 10, if you think about it, and also 10 HP is almost like an entire life that you're saving. So how you position on it is just on their weak side. You want to find where their 1-star frontliners are, and for example, in this example, maybe they have a 2-star Kabuko and a 1-star Aatrox, 1-star Kennen. You want to position on the side of the Aatrox and Kennen, and try and maybe focus fire this Aatrox down and kill it. I put only 1 backliner on our Juggernaut side of the board, but if you have like two backliners, maybe you want to actually stack the backliners so that they both target Aatrox, and so that it guarantees Aatrox to die. But I think all in all, this is kind of how you would want to play on a week opener. I'd say one of the biggest things is definitely identifying a game plan, because once you identify your game plan on like kind of what you're playing for, as well as when you're trying to spike, those things help compound, that decision compounds into your other decisions that allow you to make better, like more informed and more optimal decisions throughout your entire game. But yeah.